From Capital Public Radio in Sacramento, this is Insight. I'm Jeffrey Callison. Coming up, the story of Judas Iscariot turned into a modern-day courtroom drama. Also, how to become a motivational speaker. But first, it's not often school superintendents are on the cover of Time, but it happened last November. The magazine was profiling Rhee, the head of Washington, D.C.'s famously troubled public school system. She's attracted national attention despite being there for less than 2 years. Rhee is a friend of Sacramento Mayor Kevin Johnson and is a former board member of St. Hope, the charter school organization he used to run. Johnson organized a one-day education conference in Sacramento today and invited Rhee to be one of the speakers. She's in our studio. Michelle, welcome to Insight.
Thank you.
The Time magazine story quoted you saying about the D.C. schools, "The children of the city receive an education that every single citizen in this country should be embarrassed by." What did you mean by that? What's so bad about the education in D.C. public schools?
Well, we are largely known as one of the worst performing school districts in the country. And if you look at the statistics and the data about the achievement levels of our kids, it shows that in spades. So, for example, we have a 70 percentage point achievement gap between our white students and our black students. Of all of the ninth graders who begin high school with us, only 9% of them graduate from college within 5 years. And of all of our eighth graders, only 8% of them are on grade level in mathematics.
And what's behind all that?
What's behind all that is a school system that for decades has failed to educate students well and has failed to give kids the skills and knowledge necessary to be productive members of society.
And how did the system fail to do that, to educate the children effectively?
Well, I think that it would be naive to think that there's one reason to point to. But I think that there are a number of factors that have led to this. Probably the most significant of which is the fact that we have very little accountability in the public school system today.
What about the socioeconomic circumstances of the kids? There's a lot of poverty in Washington, D.C., and I've heard many times, and it seems to make common sense, that the house, the neighborhood, the environment that kids come from is going to have an impact on their ambitions in school.
Well, it's something that I hear from people a lot in the city. People who say, we really like what you're doing. We think you're heading in the right direction. You seem to be very ambitious and energetic about what you're taking on. But they often say, however, we don't think you're going to be able to be successful because if you look at the circumstances that your children are coming to school with, the fact that, they didn't eat breakfast in the morning before they came to school, or no one put them to bed the night before at a decent hour. Our children often lack access to basic health care and dental care, those sorts of things. But what we know is that in schools and in classrooms across the city, we have individual educators who are doing incredible things for kids and who ensure that despite every single one of those external obstacles, that their kids are successful.
How is it, though, that when you look at the overall performance of kids in schools where you got generally higher incomes, higher educational levels, like let's say Davis and Granite Bay in the Sacramento area, the kids there tending to do better than kids in poorer neighborhoods? Is there not some kind of connection between the environment the kids are coming from and their achievements in school?
Well, sure. You can't deny the fact that our children come to school with many, many more challenges than children in other communities do. But you also have to look at the statistics that show, for example, that the poor black fourth graders in Washington, D.C. are 2 grade levels below the poor black fourth graders in New York City. And the last time I checked, the poverty in Harlem looked the same as the poverty does in Anacostia. So I don't think that you can necessarily say that it's all about the environmental circumstances when you look at an apples-to-apples comparison of our kids versus kids who look exactly like them in other cities who are living the same circumstances. Our kids are still being outperformed.
Is money a problem in Washington, D.C.? Is there not enough money to fund the public school system?
Well, I think funding and education is a tough issue. And certainly here in California, the state and school districts are facing a tremendous challenge going into next fiscal year. I don't think that we could say that that is one of the main issues in D.C. because we fund our schools at a higher rate than almost any other urban jurisdiction. We spend about $14,000 per student, and the results are at the absolute bottom. So I don't think that you can say that money is going to solve all of the problems.
My guest is Michelle Rhee. She's